Glitches are one of the scariest parts of a game's development. As someone who was fairly involved with the development of a friend's game, glitches can either be fun quirks of the game-making process, or Lucifer himself coming to wipe his nose with your code. From the harmless and charming to the machine-melting, glitch is very much a dirty word in the gaming space. However, inspiration can strike in the strangest places, and a glitch may be the best way to get a game-changing idea. Today, we're looking at gameplay features that started out as glitches. There are actually a lot of different things that start out as glitches before hitting the big time, so honorable mentions go out to juggle combos from DMC, difficulty curves in Space Invaders, and cops becoming hostile in Race and Chase, for being a glitch that ended up making more money than VR porn. Starting off with a glitch that didn't just influence its own series but created its own genre, Street Fighter has been an innovator on many fronts. Creating the modern Player 1 vs. Player 2 fighting game piss-off Karate Champ, opening the door for crossover fighters galore, and proving there's really no limit to how many designs you can steal from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Street Fighter is the name when it comes to innovating fighting games. How fitting then that they just so managed to innovate on making fighting games possible. See, not a lot of people realize this, but there's actually a prequel to Street Fighter 2, titled Street Fighter. It sounds like such a dirty word to not follow up with a number or a letter, be it Latin or Greek. This hunk of coal of a game clearly has a lot of features that would be taken and plopped into later games. Special moves, health bars, timers, this guy. But one thing that was severely lacking was the ability to hit somebody twice in rapid succession. Whoa, slam the brakes, Geronimo. You're really just gonna whap somebody back to back like that? That's unfair! Yeah, this game kinda lacks a combo system, which for fighting games now sounds like it would be unthinkable. A fighting game without combos is kinda like a platformer without jumping. You could do it, but why would you do it? It wasn't until work on Street Fighter 2 started that something interesting started to happen. See, when designing the characters' movesets, certain moves would have an amount of startup lag to them. Hitting the button and doing the move didn't happen at the same time. As well, some moves had a lot of ending lag, big hits that would take a second to return to your normal stance. Basically just think Ryu's heavy kick. However, in some cases of moves with not a lot of startup or ending lag used in tandem, like a low kick into Hadouken, they could be strung together to hit the opponent multiple times. Add on to that the flinch state added to characters so that they would take a second to recover from a blow, and you have every snot-nosed brat who calls pulling off a combo unfair! This was a system that changed fighting games forever. Every flashy and fun combo in a fighting game, from Kazuma's 10-hit string to Dan's Infinite in Street Fighter V, they would not be possible if not for a slip-up when making Street Fighter 2. Speaking of fighting games, here isn't one! Nah, I kid, gamers. I'm a Melee player just like you! Look at me, mommy, I'm dash dancing! Haha, like, comment, subscribe! When it comes to fighting games, none seem to stay in the public favor much like Super Smash Bros. Melee does. Sure, Street Fighter V can have a garbage launch, Fighter Z can have a netcode of a PS1 game, and BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle can have a logo that makes solar eclipses easy to look at, but Smash just sort of doesn't go away. Trust me, Nintendo's been trying for years. We've been telling Melee for years to get out, but it just flashes that dang smile and we say, alright, you little scamp, you could stay a little longer, and then it brings over its incredibly greasy friends. Why is it that we always seem to come crawling back to the game that answered the question of how to get Ganondorf into Smash with the weirdest answer possible? By the way, look out for this video coming soon from a dedicated Ganondorf main. Why, yes, I do hate myself. Well, Melee just has a bunch of little quirks and balancing shenanigans that leave it in this perfect crystalline state where grubby patches can't stick to it. Yeah, how you gotta patch a GameCube game, dum-dum? Most famously, of course, is the technique known as wave dashing. In Melee, by dodging into the ground at an angle, you can slide along it. Now, I'm on team walking all the way, so what does this funny little dash have to offer me? Well, not only can it be faster on characters with low traction like Luigi and Jigglypuff, but it allows you to still do moves out of it at ranges that are better than if you dashed or walked. This essentially defined movement in competitive Melee. High-level play is based a lot around being able to wave dash, and the characters who can do it well have a major advantage over Peach, and Peach specifically for some reason. This feature ended up having such an influence on the community that other platform fighting games like Rivals of Aether would end up adding it as a built-in feature rather than the bug that it ended up being. Even the recent Nicktoons fighting game included it, given Ludosity had experience with games like Slap City.
Attention passengers, SpongeBob is currently performing a Korean backdash. Please do not be alarmed, we will be rectifying this issue shortly.
But you know who's a character in Smash? Sonic! Listen, I know it's not as solid a transition as the last one, cut me some slack here. Sonic and glitches seem to go hand in hand. Something about making a game that can keep up with a blue blur just seems to make problems. From falling through the floor in Sonic Adventure, Ashura the Hedgehog in Sonic 2, bouncing the truck back in Sonic Adventure 2, and the infamous flying knuckles of Sonic Boom, Sonic might as well just tell the player to watch out for these glitches. which they did. Sonic the Hedgehog 3's instruction manual says that any glitches are actually just traps by Eggman that they could get away from by resetting the console. Jesus, Eggman's really stepping up his trap game. In fact, one Sonic game realized that if it was gonna have glitches, might as well make it into a positive. Sonic 3D Blast is a lot of things. It's an opportunity for me to punch another hole on the jokes about Sonic's 3D transition card so I can get a free sundae. It's one of many Sonic games that was released on multiple SKUs regardless of how easy a downgrade it would be, and it was also a game released in the heyday of Sega's quality control policy. See, back when Sonic and Mario were leaving dead dogs on each other's doorsteps, neither could afford to be caught slipping by having a glitchy broken mess on their console. This led to both companies having an extremely strict game testing policy. Sega would essentially put a game through hell before letting the public get their hands on it. They would leave the game on for days to make sure nothing went wrong, test every level hundreds of times over, and if even one fault was found, try again later, bub, should have made a better game. This was a process veteran game designer John Burton had tangled with many a time. His way of dealing with this in games like Mickey Mania was to cause the game to boot you back to a screen detailing what went wrong when a glitch occurred. For Sonic 3D Blast, however, he decided to apply this in a new way, causing any catastrophic glitches to boot you to a secret level select screen. Since they didn't run a sloppy shop at Traveler's Tales, this didn't come up often, but it did become widespread knowledge when people swapped stories that punching the Sega Genesis would give you Sonic 3D Blast's level select. Now people were performing Street Justice on their Mega Drives to get to Knuckles Special Stage 4. What was happening was people were severing the connections between the console and the cartridge, causing a catastrophic failure and booting you to the level select. So you wouldn't be breaking the game, you were just finding a bonus feature. Yeah, we did this on purpose, honestly. Please don't delay the game, Sega, my family needs food. I have no transition between TF2 and Sonic Bite Me. Rocket jumping at TF2 is one of the most fun things you can do in terms of movement in a video game. Outside of holding down Rev and walking forward, I'd say it's the quickest way to get from one side of the map to the other. Soldier and by extension Demo were blessed with the ability to glide on their explosives to reach all new heights. Now, imagine what they would be like without that. They'd be like how I play because I don't know how to rocket jump good. According to the comments, that's not all I can't do. Well, thankfully you're not me, and they do have these tools, and it's all down to an exploit in Doom. Yes, the game famous for running on an air conditioner is responsible for Soldier being able to market gardener. In the original Doom, there was a primitive form of what we now know as rocket jumping, but instead of launching you vertically, it was optimally used to launch you horizontally. That is to imply that it was optimal though, because rocket jumping in Doom was a wet fart compared to what we see nowadays. It wasn't until id Software's follow-up Quake that rocket jumping took its true form. With the fast-paced and multiplayer focus of Quake, players need to get around fast. So what better way than to blow up your own legs? Firing rockets at your feet would let you soar across the battlefield, and then give you a chance to get right up in the enemy's face. This was then carried over where rocket jumping was given the starring role in the Quake mod turned Valve crown jewel Team Fortress. Except no, it wasn't. Sure, rockets were good, but concussive grenades were king. Medics and scouts used grenades that did no damage to themselves and launched themselves even further than a rocket could. Regardless, neither were meant to be features. That is until the actual game came out and Team Fortress 2 was pumping out weapons dedicated to the mechanic. Rocket Jumper, Sticky Jumper, Man Treads, Market Gardener, Base Jumper, Uliper Cable. This was the first game to encourage rocket jumping, and ever since the newer shooters have kept up in this fun way to mix combat and movement. It may surprise you to learn that potentially Metal Gear Solid was created based on glitching. See, in the original build of Metal Gear for the MSX2, the game was meant to be an action-packed run-and-gun game, when it became apparent to Konami employees that the hardware and their ambitions weren't exactly in sync. There was a glitch that stopped the game from rendering all the enemies required for the planned action set pieces. So relative newcomer Hideo Kojima was asked to solve the problem following the stepping down of a senior technician, and then from there the idea to make it a stealth game came along. Huh. Usually these segments last a little longer. Wait. What's that? Wine? Cigarettes? A $7,000, no, $10,000 suit? That's right, this never stopped being a TF2 segment! See, the idea of having a class be defined by a glitch like Soldier with rocket jumping is wacky enough, but what if a glitch was responsible for making the character in the first place? In the original Team Fortress mod for Quake, sometimes a player would spawn into the game after dying and appear as the enemy team, while already being on the other team. So while everyone thinks their comrade is running past them, it's actually so they can get to their actual comrades and gun them down violently. Now, as you're thinking right now, that glitch sounds rad and should just be a thing, and someone who agreed was the mod creators, as by the time of Quake World 1997, the team had taken the premise of the glitch, given it a knife, ski mask, and a drinking problem, and formed a character around it, the Spy. From there, the Spy went on to be the most defining character in TF2, and still to this day, one of the most unique FPS characters, period. What other game lets you pretend to be on the enemy team only to stab them in the back? This glitch is also responsible for every tryhard spy main who swears by the Ambassador and Conniver's kunai, led to potentially one of the most useless items in the game, the red tape recorder, and gave Pyro something else to do other than blast people off the side of Upward, which is nice. This glitch eventually got a glitch of its own, as a crouching spy with a disguise kit would look like a moron, and from there on, the Spy Crab was born, which eventually got added to the real game as a cosmetic. Mortal Kombat is a franchise filled with glitches of all sorts, and even more glitches that ended up becoming beloved gameplay features. The character of Ermac was based on less so any one glitch and more so the concept of glitches, since his name is derived from the contraction of error macros. Given his proximity to the subject of this segment, though, people assumed that Ermac was a secret character too. To be fair, after hurting people the way you did to make them unlock Reptile, this sort of thing is to be expected. This was complicated when rumors swirled of a red ninja, which was actually a glitched out Scorpion. See, if you don't realize it yet, Scorpion and Sub-Zero are palette swaps, and the palette they're swapping from in order to get to blue and yellow is a base red. It's just the neutral color used when digitizing the actors into the game, since it's the easiest to key out in front of the blue screen background. Eventually, Ermac ended up evolving from Scorpion, but he's red this time, into a Legion-type Soul Collective character, and one of the better of Mortal Kombat's Brigade of Ninjas. He's no Rain, though. He'll never be Rain. Well, if this part's not about him, then it's gotta be about Johnny Cage's triple decapitation. In Mortal Kombat 2, when performing Johnny Cage's uppercut decapitation fatality, putting the input in again super fast would result in you somehow decapitating them again and again, knocking 3 heads off of one person. This became such an endearing part of classic MK that it was immortalized as brutality in MK11, and was referenced in Johnny Cage's fatality from the same game, aka the best fatality in the game.
Also coming soon.
But no, it's not that either. So what's this segment about? Oh, you're not going to be happy when you find out. Kano is the E-Honda of Mortal Kombat 1, that is, being a character who you see in the base roster of the first game and say, oh yeah, I guess he was there too. Starting out, Kano is quite the boring character. Sure, he had a weird faceplate and could do a homing attack, but he wasn't a ninja, or Bruce Lee, or an escapee from Clay Fighter, so fuck him. However, that distinction as being a base roster pick was one that came with a lot of perks, one of which being his appearance in the Mortal Kombat movie. Ah yes, the Mortal Kombat movie! The movie we just had to say was the best video game movie for a long time because the bar was just that low. In the movie, Kano has a pretty big role, and just like all the other characters, would be getting a voice for the first time. For the tall order of bringing the iconic, beloved, and very much Japanese character Kano to the silver screen, actor Trevor Goddard was brought in. Then, in a move that probably baffled most Midway employees, performed the character as if he was a Cockney. However, despite being English, his accent was so misinterpreted by most people on set and who watched the movie that he was heaped with praise for his stunning Australian accent.
What I want to know, if this Shane Sun guy is so great, how come he's got such a crummy looking boat?
To which he responded with, yep, mate, I'm a bloomin' Australian. It was a right pissin' rips in order to be in your funny picture film. From there on out in the game, Kano went from this mysterious metal man from the Far East to an Australian loudmouth cooking, and this is a rough translation, shrimp on the Barbie.
Time for a little Australian diplomacy.
Okay, listen, I was never gonna get a chance to talk about this again, so I'm putting it in this video. Live with it. This next one is like a fun game. Everybody, cover your eyes, all right? Did it? All right, now listen to this. All right, do you feel hyped? Do you feel like changing your name to the Mystery Gourmet? Do you feel like I'm making references to things you don't understand? Well, don't worry, because I felt the same way too until I learned about Super Robot Wars. You know how there are franchises that are super big in places that you aren't? Dungeon Fighter, what is that? Oh, worth $15 billion, that's what it is. You know Asterix? Oh, yeah, the little Viking guy from the PS2. Kinda? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of his fucking theme park! What's Ampaman? Oh, more valuable than Fortnite, GTA, and Evangelion put together, that's what! Super Robot Wars is a similar thing. It's a franchise spanning over 30 years with nearly 60 games, and it's a crossover franchise for the very concept of big robots. Gundam, Neon Genesis, otherwise known as Ampaman's Punching Bag, Macross, Code Geass, Sega Hard Girls, not typing that into Google, Cowboy Bebop, Mechagodzilla, Crayon Shin-Chan, Pop Team Epic. This is a franchise fit to burst with almost every noteworthy Japanese franchise on Earth. And before I mentioned it, did you have any idea it existed? Rights debacles have kept these games out of the West for the longest time, and therefore not many people know about the raddest glitch in any video game that the devs loved so much, they made into a defining character trait. Surprisingly, the glitch isn't tied to any of the characters from pre-existing franchises, but rather an original, which is just a character made up for the game rather than being from, I don't know, Bobobo. The man? Elzam V. Bronstein, a villain turned good guy who you meet up with in Super Robot Wars original generation for the Game Boy Advanced. When he returns to join your side and save you from attack, his theme Torombe triumphantly blares over the battle music. Then the next time he goes into battle, his theme Torombe triumphantly blares over the normal battle music too. Then, even at the final boss, the man who's been trying to destroy you the entire game, Torombe even overpowers his theme. What's going on? Well, the game's soundtrack works on a tier system. Background music is placed at tier 0, character themes are placed on tier 1, and boss themes are at tier 2. Themes on tier 1 will interrupt tier 0 themes, and tier 2 themes beat out tier 1 themes. What's interesting is that tier 2 themes also beat out other tier 2 themes. When Elzam joins your side, they didn't change his theme tier. As such, he's at tier 2 when everyone else is at tier 1. That means his theme has priority over everyone else's. This is the explanation for loser dorks, because the better one is that Elzam's theme follows him around like a specter, tormenting his enemies with the fact that he is the coolest guy ever and they are about to be killed by him. This started out as a glitch, but the idea of a character having a theme that overpowers all other music is rad as hell. And the developers decided, you know what, he can have this one. And from then on out, Torombe has always had a high priority song value, beating out most other themes. I say most because there's only one song that beats it no matter what, and the explanation as for why is exactly as stupid as you'd hope. Leonardo Medici Bundle from the Go Shogun anime appears and is able to overpower Torombe's theme with his own, Blue Danube. This is only because the actual battleship that he pilots is equipped with massive speakers that blare at the theme as loud as possible, so he always gets to listen to his favorite music while in battle. It takes an in-universe massive speaker system blasting classical music as loud as possible to overpower the music that emanates from this man's body all the time, and that is the sign of being the raddest person from a franchise I had no idea existed. For the final part of our wild ride, let's take a quick stop for everyone's favorite part about video game discussion. History lessons! Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2nd, 1869, born to Karamchand Uttachand Gandhi and Putliba Gandhi. Mohandas' early life was filled with notable events, including the marrying of Kasturba Gandhi at age 13 in 1883, becoming an average and wholly unremarkable student in his high school, and losing his father in the year 1885, the same year that Kasturba and he lost their first child. After dropping out of college, Mohandas was told by a Brahmin priest, Mabji Dev Joshi, to study law abroad in England. In order to dissuade the fears of his mother and wife, who had only recently given birth to their second child, Mohandas promised to abstain from alcohol, women, and meat. It was in London that he began to exhibit some traits that would go on to define his legacy, witnessing a labor strike of London's dock workers for improved working conditions. At 22, Mohandas was called to bar and returned home to India from London, although his efforts often bore little fruit. It wasn't until a chance meeting with a man named Dada Abdullah who mentioned to Gandhi that his cousin was in need of a lawyer in Johannesburg. Once arriving, Mohandas was faced with discrimination the likes of which he had never seen before, despite seeing himself as a Brit like the other ones who had discriminated against him purely based on the color of his skin. Over the next 20 years, Mohandas was arrested 5 times in his pursuit of making a more just South Africa, working to undo the racial prejudice that made life so difficult. He might have also had a regressive view on black people, I'm not sure about that part. In 1914, he returned to India and joined their Congress, working to gain independence from Britain. In the same year, he earned the honorific title of Mahatma, meaning venerable. Across the next several years, he led protests like the Salt March of 1930 in response to a British tax on salt, the Bahir Indigo crop protests, which worked to reclaim autonomy for farmers to plant beneficial crops, and his famous hunger strikes, which sometimes went on for as long as a third of a year in extreme cases. It wasn't until 1947 that Gandhi's dream of an independent India was realized, although he did not get to enjoy this world for long, as he was assassinated in 1948 by a radicalized Hindu man, thus ending this phenomenal man's legacy that was until 1991, when Gandhi was once again risen and walked the earth again, with his want for peace replaced with an incalculable rage towards the world at large. He now wished for nothing more than to burn the world to the ground, coming up with one of his most famous phrases, "An eye for an eye means that less will witness the great fire that cleanses this world." From then on out, Gandhi continued his warmongering path, stopped for only scant moments, though it's only a matter of time until his wrath is reignited. How in the fuck do I transition to Civilization from here? I really screwed the pooch on this one. This does not need to be that hard. Civilization was an innovator in the space of real-time strategy and simulation games, allowing players to walk alongside or fight against established civilizations throughout history. Of these civilizations was India, represented by Gandhi. What should be a normally easy opponent thanks to his pacifist ways, Gandhi became infamous for his volatility. Gandhi could either be a road bump on the way to global domination, or the roadblock by which all other opponents crash against. His aggression was extremely high, demanding compensation from other players and atomizing the ones who dared to defy him. So how do you take a figure known in the world over for his peaceful protests and make him more bomb-happy than anyone else in the game? Well, that comes down to a fun mechanic called integer underflow. See, in coding, negative numbers often are unaccounted for. So instead of a value like -1 existing, that instead sends you to the highest possible position on the number line. So if you have a number line of, let's say 10, start at 1 and get a -2, instead of going to -1, you go all the way up to 10. Why is this important? Well, being Gandhi and all, Gandhi has a naturally low aggression level, starting out at a 1. When it comes time to pick a system of government, Gandhi will pick democracy, which gives a -2 to aggression. As we discussed, that would cause it to underflow and cause Gandhi's aggression to go up to 10, right? Well, that would imply that the number line used only accounted for 10. See, instead of getting a max aggression of 10 out of 10, Gandhi's aggression became 255 out of 10. Gandhi was no longer human, he was just rage incarnate, and would unleash that anger on anyone unlucky enough to find themselves in a conflict with India. Now, the practicality of actually throwing down with Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Gandhi was a little less practical than you might anticipate, as Gandhi couldn't even declare war as a democracy unless you messed with him first. Word soon got back to the devs that they'd actually made History's Kindest Grandpa into Pol Pot Turbo Edition, and they thought it was the funniest thing ever, which, fair, it is, and decided to leave that variable in later games as a joke. Instead of leading too far in and making Gandhi an actively hostile presence, they instead played it smart starting in Civ 5. In that game, there was a value determining how leaders used their resources and what they would build. It was on a table of 1 to 10. Gandhi's spread was pretty much what you'd expect. High value for peaceful traits, low value for aggressive ones. And then there's his build and use nuke likelihood. On a table of 1 to 10, Gandhi scored a 12. That's 4 points higher than the next highest nuke likelihood, and in case you didn't realize, the highest stat in the game. Gandhi's love for nuclear destruction transcends space and time, and it only got worse the longer it was allowed to fester. As by Civ 6, we got a new mechanic of hidden agendas. Leaders would get secret goals that corresponded to their historical representation, and a second randomized one. Of course, Gandhi's historical trait led him to befriend those who worked hard to create a peaceful world, and hate those that he deemed as a warmonger. What was his second trait, though? 70% of the time, it would be nuke happy, a trait that caused him to dump all of his resources into nuclear development, befriend those who kept a large standing nuclear weapons stash, and dislike those who chose to abstain from nukes. This simple glitch not only influenced the direction of the most famous strategy franchise in the world, but actually serves as an example of integer underflow studied at Harvard. And it cannot be stressed enough, turned Gandhi into the warlord he only ever could have been. What do you guys think the ending bit for this episode should be? Write it in the comments below or text it now on your phone to this phone number. What would you like the joke at the end of this video to be? I can't think of it, so you guys could just do a little legwork for the first time. I wouldn't be opposed to it anyway. Like, comment, and subscribe.